Hit it, Phil.
Can it be the breeze that fills the trees with rare and magic perfume? Oh, no, it isn't the breeze, it's Jackson time. La, da, da, da.
Well, hello again. This is Buck Benny speaking. To my left, maybe, is Kathy Fuller-Seeley. Kathy Fuller-Seeley is on our show very often, and she does a beautiful job. Kathy Fuller-Seeley, why don't you introduce our other contestant today, or other panelist?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Daryl. Beneath me, only in arrangement, but above me in spirit and knowledge, is my colleague John Henderson, who runs This Day in Jack Benny, a most wonderful podcast, and is a Benny expert. I'm awfully glad we could have him here tonight.
Hello. And I'd like to throw it back to Buck Benny, who runs a podcast called Jack Benny and OTR Podcast.
Why do we end with him? Anyway, we did it that way just because you'll see. And What's My Line, that's how they introduce themselves, is they each introduce each other. And I joked about we should do that someday. So I thought, let's do that. So it's kind of cute. It's kind of cute the way they do What's My Line. I like it. Anyway, so this is Jack appearing on What's My Line. He won't appear until the last third of the episode or less or whatever. And it's you know, you tune into Jack to hear him talk. You don't get much talking from Jack in this, so but it's just nice to see him, and it's nice to see him kind of goofing around and having a little bit of fun. It's great to see Steve Allen on here, and the whole panel. And this is the earliest, I think, of his appearances on the actual show. He does appear a couple more times. I think it's quite a few years later, like 5 years in the future, like 57-ish, something like that, and maybe once in the 60s, I think. Anyway, let's go around and see what we think about What's My Line and Jack's appearance here. So let's go with Kathy first. Kathy, what did you think of this?
Well, it was delightful to see Jack. I mean, looking so laid back and going,
Yeah.
I just, yes.
Yeah, you don't see Jack stick his tongue out very much, and so you get more of Jack's tongue than you've ever had before. So.
I so appreciated the show from the sort of the genre of nice sort of erudite cultured game shows. This reminded me of Information Please, Dan Golenpaul's radio show, and other Mark Goodson, Bill Todman productions, which were sort of far more than the screaming and yelling, jumping up and down kind of game shows. Here we have this interesting collection of panelists who are quite well known in New York for a variety of reasons. Dorothy Kilgallen, the journalist, Steve Allen, who would start his Tonight Show run in the same year of 53, Arlene Francis, and a writer named Hal Block, who does not have many credits in IMDb. Somebody needs to fill him in, but I learned that the three of them, that Steve appeared on 125 episodes of this show, Dorothy on 736, and Arlene on 831.
Wow.
So talk about like a Kardashian being famous for whatever, but that's a long time to make regular appointments to be on this.
What's amazing is they did that was all in 1 year. The show only lasted a year, and so that they filmed 7 episodes a day.
Every day. It lasted from 1950 to 1967. That is quite a run. But as I said, the pleasure of the show is seeing these fairly sort of smart, sophisticated people, although you would not know it by, as I said, I wanted to complain a little bit about the rampant sexism. Now, mind you, the show was advertised as all these people have unusual professions. Would you like an unusual profession? Watch What's My Line. But today's example, the way that the audience goes, she's a minister or she's a jazz drummer. I love that. So if you know, the little feminist in me wants to go, of course she's a jazz drummer. So
it looks like we might have Terry Phillips showing up.
Fantastic.
That would be awesome. Terry, it's Terry.
Hey there.
Terry,
should-
we're
You
live.
should sign
Yeah.
in. You should sign in, and we should have to guess what your occupation today is. You have-
Well, and Terry, you're looking like the skipper from Gilligan's Island today. Well,
You know, it was supposed to be a 3-hour cruise. I don't know what happened. I got blown around in a storm.
are you lost at sea and tuning in for help? Oh no, that's unfortunate. But it's great to see you, Terry.
Good
I'm
to see
glad
you
you can
too,
make it.
all of you,
We're talking about What's My Line?
right?
And what a great show. Kathy was just saying how it lasted from 1950 until 1967. Is that right? And it's one that I could see. I'm surprised it ended in 67. You can see it's still going. I think it'd be somewhat interesting. What's this person's, what
It
career
seems
does
to me
this
they
person
brought
have?
it back after John Daly left. Didn't Wally Bruner host it for a while?
Hmm.
It seems to me in the, I don't know, 70s or 80s, they had a reboot of it.
Oh,
Yes.
But John Daly was tremendous, and I was a big fan of his because he was not only a great host of this program, but a terrific journalist and commentator as well.
Very good. That's cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I've heard the name Steve Allen, but I really didn't recognize anybody in this episode. And I watch a lot of classic TV, but they're usually the sitcoms. It seems like these people are drawn from a different world.
Yes. Yeah, and really the one that, of course, to modern audiences would be the most famous would be Steve Allen. The rest of them are known for, well, a lot of it they're known for the appearances on this show, plus other like a lot of them are on other game shows and so forth. Go ahead, Kathy.
yeah, and they were probably very active in like local New York television. So
Yes.
you probably, saw them all the time.
Well, and Dorothy Kilgallen was a nationally famous columnist
Yes.
who got into some very controversial areas, including her take on the Kennedy assassination. She was one of the last people to see Jack Ruby alive when he was, being held for the murder of Lee Harvey Oswald, the killer of President Kennedy.
Yes.
At the other end of the panel, there was, of course, there was Arlene Francis, who was also big in Broadway circles and on radio and TV. And at the far, as we looked at the screen, the far right side of the panel, sitting in the seat that would later be occupied, mostly occupied by, oh shoot, his name has just slipped me, the
Fred Allen.
publisher, sorry?
Fred Allen was on the show a lot.
He was
There-
on To Tell the Truth. So
I'm gonna have to look. I can't believe his name has slipped my mind. Anyway, Hal Block, the guy who was sitting on the far right side, was a famous and in some ways infamous writer, comedy writer and comic himself, and was also kind of a controversial figure. And I think he left this show under less than happy circumstances. There were some accusations made about his treatment of particularly some of the women involved in the show. Bennett Cerf
thank you. Right,
Bennett Cerf is the name I was trying to think of. I'm sorry. Yeah, and he was kind of the anchor of that show, and usually sat in the chair that Hal Block occupied.
Okay.
Well, I had just been saying that the IMDb entry on Block was very small. And so now you've been providing the information we all want to know about Hal Block. So
Why it was small.
I don't remember exactly what happened, what was said, or what was done, but it was apparently it was not a happy departure for him.
Yeah. So
Well,
he got canceled.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I was surprised even in this episode with the way that they, commented on the First Lady's attractiveness. I thought that's not really something that they would do today. It's one thing when you see Bob Hope and it's Marilyn Monroe or somebody who's sort of like, that's their thing. So it sort of makes sense for Bob Hope to be commenting on it. But this is just like an everyday person. So I thought that was very strange.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't strange at the time.
Yeah.
look at their hands. I wondered if they made all the men pass. We didn't see if they made regular male contestants pass in front of the panel and
As I
examine their
recall, one of
hands.
the reasons Dorothy Kilgallen did that was to see if they had rough hands or smooth hands, to try
Right.
to guess
Sure.
whether they did
Yeah.
manual labor
Oh, yeah.
or not.
it makes perfect sense, but it just looks odd. So,
Yes.
Well, it didn't help that they had two female contestants, so we didn't need to see what they would do with a male contestant. Because of course Jack didn't. They had blindfolds on. They didn't do any of the normal things they were doing.
but they would have said he has lovely hands.
Yes, that's
So-
right. They feel like a violinist's hands. I don't know. I was impressed. My wife watched it with me. She almost never watches the shows with me, but I threw it on last night. We both were watching it. And she commented on how intelligent the people seemed that were the panelists and how quickly they guessed. One of them I think they got 3 wrong answers and that was it. And the other one, they got a few more wrong answers, but they had plenty to go. They weren't close to tapping out. So, because originally when I first saw it, I was going, okay, so they have 10 shots at this, 10 no's. I thought, well, that you could see a contestant pull that off, but not in this case. And I don't know how often they had actual winners that beat the panel. And did they say what you got if you beat the panel? I mean, they said it was $5 per question.
Oh,
So
my God.
I was
Oh,
adding that up.
yeah,
It's like
you got
$50.
$100.
Ooh,
Or sorry, $50. It was 10 no's at $5 a piece.
Wow.
yeah. But I was thinking if you made it past the 10th one, you would think there'd be some sort of bonus. In modern days,
Probably
they
got
multiply it by
a lo-
10
A
or
duck
something.
would come down, that's.
Yeah.
Probably got a shipment of Stopette.
Yes.
Oh
yes.
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 I thought it was so weird that they, this intelligent game show and they're advertising Stop at deodorant spray.
Yes.
And there's a
And the
big
chemist
and
was
then it-
supposed to be famous.
Well, I was thinking, I was talking to my wife and I was like, wow, that's actually a pretty good name for deodorant. I was thinking you could have a lot of fun with it in the 70s, with humorous ads about, oh my gosh,
There you
you
go.
reek, stop it,
In the
stop it.
70s, In the 70s, they had one called Psst. So,
Oh yeah, that's right.
but
I
I
have to say-
love that the ad is emblazoned on the front of the panelists' credenza there with the thing spraying. Put right at Steve Allen, just trying to.
I want to say something about Jack's appearance on this show.
Go ahead.
First of all, they changed the way the questions were asked as this series progressed. This was 1953, is that right?
Yes.
So fairly early in the show's run. But as the show evolved with the mystery guest, each panelist would get to ask only one question, and then they would pass it on to the next. Here, they treated the mystery guest the same way they treated the other contestants, which was you could keep asking questions until you got a no.
Right.
But they wanted to move it along for the mystery guest, and I'm suspicious that in the case of Jack Benny, they probably guessed early on who it was, but they just wanted to keep the show going. It was a half-hour show. They didn't want to end it after 20 minutes.
Right.
So I think they were deliberately prolonging the suspense.
I would think so. I mean, how many comedians are known for playing a musical instrument that's a comedian? There'd essentially be probably one, and then known for performing with their wives. That pretty much locks it down to Burns.
Well, that's Fred Allen. Why didn't they guess Fred Allen? He played a clarinet.
Oh, that.
That's true.
Yes, he played a little bit. Anyway,
Danny Kaye played something. I mean, so.
Yeah. well,
I
and of
could
course,
definitely see-
George Burns had that. What was he called? Velvet. His velvet throat or something
No,
like
no,
that.
that was
Yeah.
that was
Sugar throat?
Mel Torme,
Okay.
the Velvet Fog.
Oh yes, but George had a name like that. I think he copied it off of that.
Yeah, I think he called himself Old Silver Throat or something like
Yeah,
that.
something like that. Yeah. So anyway, but John, you were going to say something, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I agree that the contestants may be new, especially Dorothy Kilgallen. You can sort of see when she knows for sure, and then she's like, I'll mull it over a little bit, let everybody else have another chance.
Yeah.
I did think that she was quite good at the game. You can see why she was on for 700 episodes or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's just amazing run this show had, and like I say, I thought it was kind of fun. It was just, it's neat to see like Kathy was saying, a talk show that's, I mean, a game show that's just different. That's just like, okay, this is just a panel of people. We're just trying to figure out this person's profession. It's just kind of cool. And you were saying, Kathy, I was thinking that Fred Allen was on this show, but Fred Allen was on To Tell the
I
Truth.
think he's on,
He's on this show
I
too.
believe so.
Oh,
Yeah,
Oh, and
Fred
this
Allen
show
did
too.
this show.
Yeah.
okay. So he
And
did both,
and
probably.
is it this one that he was on and then, you know, he had his heart attack and passed in the middle of the week and they didn't
Yeah.
know what to do that following broadcast. And I think they said, we'll go on ahead. We'll forge ahead. Fred would have wanted us to do
But
that.
after he passed, they did pay tribute to him on this show. They had kind of a somber opening to that episode.
Yeah.
All right. If they would have, because Fred, I gotta say, Fred would have poked fun at himself even after he was gone. They could have had somebody come on. What's their line? Oh, this guy's an undertaker, and then had somebody else come on. What's this guy do? and Fred would have liked that. I think Fred would have really liked that, but I don't think they did that. I think they might have got into a little bit of trouble, but it could be that. So anyway, just like I say, a wonderful show. We'll be bringing you more episodes of What's My Line that featured Jack. And I'll search around if there's any that have feature like Dennis or anybody else from the show. I'll pop over.
There's actually, you should look for, there's one with Rochester. There's also one with Jack Benny's violin teacher.
Oh,
Yeah.
That'd be a stretch, but we could present that. They will present that one linked with another one or something. But okay, that's interesting. Very cool. Well, Terry, just before we go, where were we at with the next episode of your presentations? Are you writing it? Are you almost done with it, or where are we at?
Imaginaire Theater is on hold because
Oh.
I'm in the process of preparing to premiere my one-man show. I'm not the actor, but we're doing a one-man show.
You're not the man.
Will premiere on September 1st
Yeah.
in Santa Barbara, California. You all come on, see it.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's awesome.
and
So
it's,
how
I
long
remember if I
of
told
a
you before,
gestation did this have for you creating this one-man show thing?
this show was originally the writing began, I should say, 4 years ago.
Wow.
And it was supposed to premiere in March of 2020. And then there was this little pandemic.
Yeah.
And so, all the theaters were closed and we couldn't go ahead. But now theaters are starting to open. And so we've got a premiere date of September 1st at the Center Stage Theater in Santa Barbara.
Wow.
And I
Fantastic.
can't remember if I told you, it's called Ronald Reagan Saves the World.
Okay. And who's the actor? Anybody we would know that's in it? Or
the actor has been around for 40 years, but I'll bet you don't know his name. He's Paul Messenger. He's also a director
Oh.
and has done soap operas and tons of commercials and a lot of stage acting. He's very well known in theatrical circles. And he was originally going to direct this episode. We are planning to take it on the road after our 2 weekends in Santa Barbara. So keep an eye open for it in a theater near you.
That's awesome. Come up Seattle way. We'd love to see you.
All right.
And see the performance. Now, so I guess he's doing Ronald Reagan the whole time, is it?
He's doing Reagan, and then we have a few other voices who you hear but don't see.
Don't see. Okay.
It's kind of a biography of Reagan's life from his childhood to through to his presidency. But a lot of what he says, a lot of what the character says, Ronald Reagan actually said.
Right.
It's mostly his own words.
Ronald Reagan certainly was a fascinating character.
He
Yeah.
was an amazing character. And it's an interesting comparison between his presidency and more recent presidencies.
Yeah.
So
I mean, literally, you could do a one-man show pretty much about every president, at least since Reagan. They all
I
are
was gonna
interesting
say,
in their own way.
William Henry Harrison. It would be a very short.
Yes, I said since, not before. So,
Oh, okay.
so I'm just thinking. I think a Clinton one could be interesting. Obama would certainly be interesting.
Yeah.
Even Biden would be interesting, just because he could talk about. You could feature a young Biden and a middle Biden, an old Biden, or something. And yeah,
But I would think doing the research for it would also be fascinating. Did you mostly rely on like his autobiography, or did you go back to find things that were written about him during his Hollywood days? Or
I did all of that, plus I talked to people who knew him. There are still some folks around who worked for Reagan, and I talked to several of those, got some interesting stories that I haven't found elsewhere.
That's great.
But you're right, Kathy. I mean, there's just plenty of material to be mined, and the research was a lot of fun. It was, by the way, not my idea. This was brought to me by another actor who wanted me to write it for him, and halfway through the project, he had to drop out. So I was stuck with this play and no one to perform it. We worked with a casting director, and there might be others coming along, including some we've already talked to, whose names will be more familiar to, but I'm kind of constrained from talking about that yet.
Of course.
Suffice to say that I think this show, knock on wood, is probably going to have some legs.
Yeah. Well, and if you take it up to Canada, John can do all kinds of voices, so you could have John be Reagan. I think
Excellent.
that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I'll do like a Saturday Night Live style.
There's really only one word you need, John. There's only one word you need. It's well.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a Jack Benny word that goes with Reagan as well. Well.
When you get up and going to give it more, maybe we could do a special episode about things we could dig up about Jack B. Because I know they went to parties together in Hollywood days, and then when he was governor. So maybe we can do Jack meets.
It'll just be
Jack meets Ron.
That is correct. Well, with that, we'll let you enjoy this episode of What's My Line with Jack Benny, and we'll see you folks next time. Thanks, guys. You're great.
And now, What's My Line? Brought to you by Stop at Spray Deodorant. Poof, there goes perspiration. Poof Deodorant Body Powder, the body powder you spray. Finesse Shampoo, the new flowing cream shampoo. All in the first truly functional cosmetic containers, far easier to use. All created by Dr. Jules Montagnier, the famous cosmetic chemist. Time now to enjoy What's My Line?
And now let's meet our What's My Line panel of well-known personalities whose lines you already know. First, the popular columnist whose voice of Broadway appears in the New York Journal American and papers coast to coast, Miss Dorothy Kilgallen.
On my left, the clever young humorist who stars in his own television show on Monday nights on another network, Mr. Steve Allen.
Thank you. And on my left, one of the lovely ladies of radio and television, whose right eye has just returned from a week in Miami. We're very happy to have it back with us this week. Arlene Francis.
All the better to wink at you with. And on my left, our favorite comedy writer who has written for all the great comedians, including Ken Murray, whose new show started tonight, our Pixie panelist, Hal Dimples Block.
Thank you. Ken did a swell show tonight. And on my left, one of the, well, I would say the greatest news commentator, the greatest master of ceremonies, and the greatest writer. He wrote this introduction, John Daly.
Too many superlatives couldn't be mine. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to What's My Line, presented by Stopette. Once again tonight, we have some nice people who have come to visit us and brought with them their occupations. We think they're occupations which will give my friends on the panel some trouble. We also hope that they will give our guests a chance to carry home some prizes. We'll have a guest challenger, a famous guest challenger, before the panel a bit later in the program. But right now, it's time for the experts to meet our first challenger whose job they've got to spot. So will you sign in, please, ma'am? Lila, Dell, Miller. Lila, Dell, Miller. Miss, is it?
Yes.
Miss Miller?
Miss?
Yes, Miss. This this is a pretty dangerous status to have when you're this close to Mr. Block. Come over this way a bit further. That's right. Now, would you be good enough to tell us where you come from?
Columbus, Georgia.
Columbus, Georgia.
Well,
Well-
shut my ever-loving mouth.
I will say this, that Georgia has a great tradition for peaches. I might say that I can understand the tradition now. And would you be good enough to walk
Got
down
some
in
pretty
front
nice
of the
tomatoes there, too.
May I see your hands, please? Thank you.
All right, Miss Miller, will you come over here now and sit down next to me, and on the basis of your good, firm, clear signature, your good, firm, clear voice, and the brief acquaintance which the members of the panel have had with you, we give them at this point one free guess as to what your line may be, and we will begin the free guesses with Miss Kilgallen.
I think she plays the harp.
Plays the harp, Mr. Allen.
Well, she's from the South, and judging by her mink, I think maybe she raises sugar daddies.
Miss Francis.
Well, Miss Miller's bearing is very poised. I think she teaches diction.
Mr. Block.
Well, I don't know what she does, but if it takes two to tango, I'd like to be one of them.
Well, I'm afraid nobody has the right answer. We'll let our viewers at home have a further look at Miss Miller, and at the same time, we will tell them what her line is. But the panel will have to dig. And now, Miss Miller, the rules are very simple. Actually, every time you can give the panel a no answer, it'll cost them $5. We'll keep a record of it all up here. 10 of these no's, and the most important thing happens. You have won the game. We always give one last bit of help. Miss Miller is self-employed. With that, we will begin the general questioning with Miss Kilgallen.
Miss Miller, do you deal in services?
Yes.
Would both men and women be happy to have your services?
Yes.
Is there any product involved?
No.
1 down and 9 to go, Mr. Allen.
Do you deal ordinarily with one sex more than the other?
No.
2 down and 8 to go, Miss Francis.
Does your work have anything to do with instruction of any kind?
Yes.
Do you teach in classes of any kind?
No.
Small conference, please. Will you excuse us for about 2 minutes?
Anyone want to play bingo?
Whatever happened to old John?
He's become young John.
Please, go away.
Say a few words about Texas.
Miss Francis, would you be good enough to ask that question again to help us to determine whether we could be quite fair in giving you the no that we want to give you?
Well, now that I know there's some problem about it, John, I'll phrase it a different way. Does Miss Miller, by any chance, speak or address an audience of any kind?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There'll be no more conferences.
Is there anything entertaining about what you do?
Sometimes.
Do they charge admission to see or hear you?
No.
That's 3 down and 7 to go, Mr. Block.
Is what you do educational at all?
Yes, I think we could describe it as educational. I mean, there are certainly many, many instances when somebody who was in attendance as a participant would certainly get educational value. So you go on, Mr. Block.
We all lost the question now.
Well, that's what I was hoping you'd do, actually.
Do people feel happier on account of what you do for them?
Yes.
Well, do you help their particular social life?
Yes.
Both of them?
Male
What do you
and
mean by
female?
both of them? I only thought we were talking
Male
about
and
one.
female.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, yes.
I'll pass to Dorothy. She's an authority on that.
All right, Miss Kilgallen.
On what, males and females?
Well, who else is there?
Miss Miller, is there, by any chance, anything religious about what you do?
Yes.
Yes.
Could your speeches to this audience of men and women have something of a religious nature?
Yes.
Would they be called sermons rather than just plain lectures or entertainment?
Yes.
Well, are you a preacher?
Yes.
I didn't even have to accept that.
I'm
Miss
sure
Miller
you
is
must
a
be the
minister.
prettiest one in Georgia or any place else.
I beg your pardon?
I
Miss
said, I
Miller?
think Miss Miller must be the prettiest one in Georgia or any place else.
I think we will have to agree with that. And she also
Where's the congregation?
in Columbus, Georgia. Oh, you're an evangelist. That's right. Actually,
Evangelist.
Miss Miller doesn't stay in
Evangelist.
one place. She moves about a good deal, but your home is in Columbus, Georgia. I must say that I thought this was going to give you a great deal more trouble than it did. I think perhaps you have the mean and the gentleness of your profession, and it gave you away to some degree. You didn't do too well with the prizes, but we do hope that you enjoyed your visit with us, because it was very nice having you with us on What's My Line.
Thank
Good
you.
night. And now, panel, let's see what we can do with another challenger. Would you be good enough to sign in, please, ma'am? Mildred Landwehr, is that right? Is it Miss or Mrs. Landwehr, would you be good enough to tell us where you're from?
I'm from Trenton, New Jersey.
Trenton, New Jersey.
That's right.
Well, I think very probably the people who are sitting over there on the panel are all very familiar to you, but they would like to know you a bit better. So would you walk over in front of the panel, please? All right, now, Mrs. Landwehr, will you come over here and sit down next to me? And on the basis of your brief visit with the panel, as I think you probably know, we always give them one free guess as to what your line may be, and we will begin the free guesses with Miss Kilgallen.
I think she's an astrologer.
An astrologer, Mr. Allen.
Well, if the last lady was an evangelist, this lady must be a bubble dancer.
I think she makes crazy quilts.
Mr. Block.
I think she's cute.
That I think we'll agree with, but it isn't the answer we were looking for. We'll let our viewers at home have a further look at Mrs. Landwehr, and at the same time, we'll tell them what her line is. Well, now, Mrs. Landwehr, I think you know the rules. Every no answer, $5. 10 of these no's. We keep the record right up here. You've won the game. You all set? Will you come in just a bit closer? All right, the last bit of help. Mrs. Landwehr is self-employed. With that, we'll begin the general questioning with Steve Allen.
Mrs. Landwehr, do you deal in services?
Yes.
Do you perform these services such as they are for both sexes?
Yes.
Would it be possible for you to perform them for both sexes together?
Yes.
I see. Would it possibly make them happier?
Yes.
There's something kind of motherly about you. Would the performance of these duties possibly ever be applied to a young couple before they got married?
Yes.
Yes, surely.
Would it in any way serve to bring them closer together?
It could drive them together, yes.
Could the performance of your duties also bring strangers closer together?
Yes.
Get them together. Could you do anything for me?
Yes.
Yeah, I could say that something could be done for you, yeah.
You seem very helpful. Is by any chance your work easier when the fellas are rich and the girls are good looking?
Wait a minute, do that again. Is it easier when the fellows are rich and the girls are good looking?
Uh-huh.
Well, I would, if Mrs. Landwehr will let me take this over for a moment, say that it's possible that the reception of her services, which is what you're talking about, might be better if the fellow were rich and the girl were good looking, yes.
Anything is better if the fellow's rich and the girl's...
That's the point I was making, Dorothy. Very good.
Dorothy.
Do you deal in advice of any kind?
On a what?
In advice?
Oh, I thought you said in
No.
advice of any kind.
Bad time to bring that up.
Do you deal in advice of any kind? No. That would make it 1 down and 9 to go, Miss Francis.
Do you work in one place?
No.
That makes it 2 down and 8 to go, Mr. Block.
Then you usually travel around.
Very good, Mr. Block.
Well, I like do you have any special talent in what you do?
Yes.
You need a special talent? In
Yes.
other words, anybody couldn't do what you do.
No.
Do you need any special instruction in what you do?
Yes.
Is your work by any chance entertaining?
Yes.
Now I'd like to know what I'm talking about. Do we have a little conference?
You may have 15 seconds for a conference.
See if she does her work in any sort of an arena or in an enclosure where people would be watching.
Do you
Go
have
ahead.
anything? Well, we're arena bound. Do you do anything in sort of an enclosure or an arena?
Sometimes.
Oh, this kid you can't pin down.
If you can, maybe she's a wrestler.
That's one way to make both ends meet. Do you have anything to do with music, by any chance?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Do you play a musical instrument?
Yes.
Do you play it with your mouth?
No.
That makes it 3 down and 7 to go, Miss Kilgallen.
Now, is this musical instrument involved in your work?
Yes.
This isn't just a hobby that has nothing to do with it. Now, this propelling of young men and women together that you're able to do, is this physical as well as social? This isn't just an intellectual
Yes, we would
propelling.
say it's physical. I mean, the end product of the services which Mrs. Landwehr performs might well be the propulsion of one sex toward the another to the
Here we
general
go again.
satisfaction and goodwill of both.
On this instrument that you play, do you ever play hillbilly tunes?
Yes.
Such as would be used for square dancing?
Yes, sometimes.
Could. And this is, of course, understood that hillbilly tunes can be played by a concert of instruments.
Yes. Would you say that your work was on a more popular level than, let us say, a virtuoso who would play at Carnegie Hall?
Yes.
Do you usually play when people are doing some type of dancing or other energetic entertainment? Well, are they dancing?
Yes.
Do you use your fingers in playing?
Yes.
Do you by any chance play a violin?
No. 4 down and 6 to go, Mr. Allen.
Nice try.
You don't use your mouth, but you do use your fingers.
The fingers are involved, yes.
Are the feet involved?
Yes.
Are there any kind of strings in the instrument which you play?
Thank you. 5 down and 5 to go, Miss Francie.
Well, does Miss Landwehr play several instruments at once?
I think it could be described that way, couldn't it?
I mean, what I really meant was, is Miss Landwehr sort of a one-woman band kind of arrangement?
A one-woman band. That'll make it 6 down and 4 to go. We left the door open, Mr. Block, but you've got the right idea.
Do you play a lot of instruments at one time?
Oh, Hal.
Yes.
Well, 10 seconds
I
for a
just
gun.
thought of something.
What did you think of it?
Like virtue of Dorothy.
Well, if she plays with her feet and her hands, it has to be drums, percussion instruments, doesn't it? You know, like Pluto.
You know, I just got a strange thought. Maybe she plays the drums.
That's right. Well, Mrs. Landwehr, we gave him a bit of trouble.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Mrs. Landwehr is a jazz drummer.
Ah.
Well, that beats everything.
That beats everything. And she nearly beat you. You did very well with the prizes. And I must say that we did very well having you with us, because
Well, it
we
was
had a lot of
pleasure.
fun. Hope you did too.
It was
Nice of
pleasure.
you to visit us and watch my line. Good night. Off with you. And now we come to the special feature of our program, the appearance of our mystery celebrity. My friends on the panel would most certainly recognize our famous guest on sight. So, as usual, we have provided them with blindfolds. Are those blindfolds all in place, panel?
Yes, John.
Good. Will you come in, mystery challenger, and sign in, please? As you know, in the case of our mystery challenger, we always dispense with the usual preliminaries. We get right down to the general questioning, which we will begin with
Miss Arlene Francis.
Well, we've already had Arthur Godfrey, so unless we're doing a repeat for the West Coast, this can't be he. Are you in the entertainment business?
No question.
Have you appeared in pictures? Are you male? Takes a little long. What? Yes?
Maybe airmail.
Yes, the answer to that, Miss Arlene.
And you've appeared in television? And radio? Well, there's nothing very much left then. Would you be considered a comedian? Are you, would you consider yourself a leading man?
I would say that our guest is handsome enough to be a leading man and young enough to be a leading man and is very probably considered a leading.
But he doesn't consider himself a leading man?
I think probably he also considers himself a leading man.
Would I consider you a leading man? Well, are you primarily known as a comedian? Is that your forte? Or are you also a straight actor?
No,
Are you
one question at a time.
All right.
Miss
Are you
Arlene.
primarily known as a comedian? Do you do anything besides act? I mean by that, do you play a musical instrument or sing? You do one of those things? Are you a singer?
One down and 9 to go. Mr. Brock.
Well, have you been on a television show in the last year? I happen to have. Have you ever had your own show in radio or television? Have you ever been featured in a picture? And this isn't your great racket? You know something? You should just stick to being a comedian. In addition to being a comedian, you do something else. Do you play an instrument? Oh! I bet you thought I knew what I was talking about. Is it by any chance a very popular instrument? Something that most people have in the home?
Well, to the degree that people have an interest in music, you might find this in a great many homes.
Is it possibly something with strings?
Strings, yes.
Is it the piano?
That would make it...
Well, pianos have strings.
2 down and 8 to go. Miss Kilgallen.
Have you ever appeared on the New York stage? Were you a comedian then, too? When you work as a comedian, are you usually in proximity to people who are known as stooges or supporting players, I suppose, more politely?
Well, are you in proximity to supporting players when you are performing as a comedian?
I mean that, is he that rather than a monologist?
Whatever became a ha-ha.
Did I get a yes on that?
You go on from there. Actually, I think, Miss Kilgallen, that we would have to admit that our guest is, on many occasions, a monologist, and on other occasions, you will find that he uses supporting players.
He seems to do everything. Do you have a regular radio program of your own? And do you use supporting players on that? Steve, I'll pass to you while I cogitate.
All right, Mr. Allen, let's see what you can do. We have about 2 minutes and a half to go.
While you're cogitating, why don't you think it over?
I'm going to try to.
Let's see. Does your wife ever work with you when you work?
Uh-huh.
That's too bad. I'll speak to your agent about that. Do you by any chance ever work with your orchestra leader? I mean, is he a part of your entourage?
Uh-huh.
Is your hair... Are you having a little trouble with your hair?
Is that properly a no answer? Okay, that's 3 down and 7 to go.
He's having no trouble with his hair. He has hair.
Looks grand.
Have you hair?
It is both full and handsome. Go on from there, Miss Preston.
Let me see now. Have you ever been on the road to anything in a picture?
That makes it 4 down and 6 to go, Mr. Block.
I'd like to find out what Steve was thinking of.
Now, we have only about 55 seconds to go, Mr. Block.
I'd like to, too.
Well, are you in New York in a vehicle right now?
No, he's on a stage in a theater. That's 5 down and 5 to go, Miss Kilgallen.
Well, are you usually in California?
Are you usually in California?
Is that where you live?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you work with your wife and you play a stringed instrument and you have hair, even if it isn't all your own, are you Jack Benny?
Jack Benny! Coming to
If I would have only asked if he was 39.
No. Could I ask just one question?
Why, sure.
Do I get paid for tonight?
And now, in just a moment, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to give you a preview look at one of our guests whose line our panel is going to be asked to guess on next week's program. But first, here is something to remember. And now next week at this same time, our panel of experts will be asked, "What's my line?" by this man. Would you know what his occupation is? Could you spot his line? We'll stop at invite you to join us again next Sunday night at 10:30 p.m. to see if you can guess it along with our panel. So be sure to be with us then, and remember that on Wednesday nights you will find What's My Line, a completely new show on CBS Radio. That's on Wednesday nights. And until we see you again, this is John Daly saying good night, Dorothy.
Good night, Steve.
Good night, Arlene.
Good night, Hal.
Good night, Jack.
Oh, and good night, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for being with us on What's My Line.